While riding his sports bike on the highway, this man suddenly sees a cop behind him. Instead of behaving himself, he decides to do this. Moments later, the rider gets held up at a stoplight, giving the cops the chance to corner him. Instead of getting caught, this happens. Pulling over when instructed by a cop ensures safety, legal compliance, and cooperation, preventing escalation of the situation and potential consequences. This reckless driver decides to do the opposite though, repeatedly taunting the cops, confident of the fact that they can't catch him. What happens next remains to be unknown as the clip ends abruptly. A group of bikers decide that it would be a good idea to ride their bikes on a busy road in one large group. That would be fine in itself, but what's not good is doing tricks like these that endanger your lives and the lives of others. Moments later, the person recording the encounter notices his friends slowing down. When he decides to look back, he sees this. Practicing road safety reduces accidents, saves lives, and promotes responsible behavior, ensuring the well-being of all road users. Hopefully, this group of reckless drivers got caught and put to jail. This next encounter shows something very similar to the last one. It shows a group of bikers wreaking havoc on the streets. Moments later, the group of bikers passed by a cop and they were asked to stop. Unfortunately for this police officer, they had other plans. Attempting to flee from police can lead to pursuit, additional charges, potential harm, and severe legal consequences, including arrest and imprisonment. In this case, they seem like they know that they aren't going to get caught, as evidenced by the group pulling tricks despite getting pursued. Always remember that there's nothing cool about endangering the lives of others. The video begins with a police officer turning on his lights and siren in an attempt to signal to a rider on the street to pull over. At first, the rider slows down and moves to his left, but things quickly take a dark turn after the rider decides to do this. The cop immediately rushes to catch the biker, but fails miserably, as the rider decides to taunt him for being too slow. Despite the multiple close calls, the rider of the bike refuses to surrender and continues doing this to the cop, angering him more. Unfortunately, this reckless rider manages to escape law enforcement this time. What was supposed to be a safe highway for everyone suddenly becomes a racetrack after a group of bikers decides to hang out on the road. If speeding wasn't enough, the group of bikers decided that it would be a good idea to do tricks, risking the lives of others in the process.
Some of them popping wheelies, some of them taunting a lone CHP officer.
The behavior displayed by the riders on the motorcycles was extreme.
After seeing the chaos caused by the riders, a cop decides to approach one of them, begging them to ride safely. This was their response.
The officer was trying to tell the bikers to slow down, but watch what happens. The biker with the camera that was shooting the video waves at the officer as if to tell him to go away.
Being outnumbered and unwilling to risk endangering more lives, the cop decides to leave them alone instead of going on a chase. Police are still investigating this case and no arrests have been made. A biker can be seen stopping at a red light when all of a sudden, a police officer decides to rush him without warning. Because of this, the biker decides to be uncooperative as the cop is unable to provide him with a clear reason for his detainment. Police typically need probable cause, such as witnessing a crime or having reasonable suspicion, to justify stops, searches, or arrests. The cop can be seen desperately trying to reason with the biker, but finally, having enough, the biker decides to do this instead.
Now I'm going to be late for roll call for the fireworks. That's right, so what's the 600?
Unable to go back to his car on time, the biker manages to escape. A biker was out recording himself riding his dirt bike on a dirt track, when all of a sudden, he looked back only to see this. The biker immediately pushes his bike to the limit in an attempt to run away from the police, officially turning this into a dangerous chase. After seeing a potential chance to escape, the biker decides to maneuver carefully between the two paths, leaving the officers guessing. As soon as he sees one of the officers get out of the vehicle, he quickly begins speeding up to outrun them. Shockingly, he was able to escape due to outmaneuvering the police. What was supposed to be a quiet night ride suddenly becomes a nightmare for this rider after a police officer decides to do this. Thinking that he was being stopped for no reason, the biker decided to speed up and taunt the police for good measure. Speeding increases the risk of accidents, reduces reaction time, and makes collisions more severe, endangering lives and violating traffic laws. The cops, still in hot pursuit of the biker, leave the biker no other choice but to do something unexpected to escape. He was able to escape after pulling a very unexpected turn. Police sirens can be heard getting louder and louder as police officers attempt to chase a biker who refuses to stop. This security camera pointing at a construction barricade captured how the biker was able to dodge the cops by doing this. After crossing the barricade with ease, the cops can be seen having a hard time fitting their vehicles through the small gap. Unfortunately, it is still unknown whether or not they were able to arrest the suspect. A biker can be seen recording himself with a GoPro attached to his helmet, getting pulled over by a police officer on the highway. The biker decides to slow down and move to the side. Thinking that he was about to pull over, the cop decided to do the same. Unfortunately for the police officer, the biker had no plans to stop in the first place and did this instead of stopping. Pulling over promptly ensures safety, compliance with the law, and cooperation with authorities, preventing escalation of the situation and potential consequences. The biker manages to escape after fooling the police officer. What was supposed to be a routine traffic stop suddenly becomes a problem after two cops fail to stop a fleeing biker. While chasing the rider, one of the cops can be seen trying to corner the biker, which eventually leads to this happening. Despite falling off his bike, this rider decides to ride his bike again, instead of surrendering peacefully to the police officers chasing him. Running from cops escalates the situation, increases risks to oneself and others, and leads to additional charges and legal consequences. Surprisingly, this biker manages to escape the cops by maneuvering through tight spaces. After running into the woods for cover, This biker decides to fire up his GoPro to record a cop chasing him. After crashing his motorcycle, the cop can be seen chasing the rider on foot through the woods, which is really stupid.
Must watch till the end. You won't be disappointed.
The biker decides to taunt and make fun of the cop by circling and passing by the cop's fallen dirt bike.
Definition of humiliation is here.
Many riders respect law enforcement and abide by traffic laws, while others may fear consequences if they violate them. For this rider, though, he just sees police officers as big jokes. A biker decides to record himself speeding on an open road when, out of nowhere, he gets surprised by a cop in front of him. The cops immediately signal to the rider to pull over, but as we are all so familiar with, the rider refuses and does this instead. This understandably angers the cops, which eventually leads to this very intense and fast chase between a rider and two police officers. Charges for fleeing from police can include evading arrest, reckless driving, and other related offences, resulting in fines, imprisonment, and licence suspension. Luckily for this biker, he was able to escape possible charges that day. This next video shows a police officer recording himself responding to a robber escaping with the use of a dirt bike.
É o cara, hein? Ó, massa pra caralho. Vai lá, vai lá, vai lá, vai lá.
After quickly identifying the criminal, this cop proceeds to chase him around until something shocking happens. Still refusing to surrender, the suspect tries to escape on foot, but fails miserably after cops corner him and do this.
Já era, trouxa, já era. Já era, não dá.
Charges for resisting arrest vary, but may include obstruction of justice, assault on an officer, or fleeing, leading to fines, imprisonment, or both. Thankfully, these cops had enough chemistry to catch this criminal easily. In this normally quiet neighborhood, a biker randomly decides to wreak havoc on the streets by doing tricks and speeding on his bike. The police officers immediately try stopping him, only to fail after the biker decides not to surrender, choosing to run away instead. Still hearing the sirens behind him, the biker decides to pull one last trick to escape and proceeds to do something extraordinarily shocking. This leaves the police officers unable to catch him due to the dirt road being too narrow for their vehicle to pass through. The rider manages to escape successfully after pulling off a crazy maneuver. This biker decides to record himself revving his bike's engine in the middle of the road and causing a disturbance in general. The rider then decides to take a right turn, only to see a cop car waiting for him, leading to this very intense chase happening. The rider proceeds to mess with the cops while being chased, but the smile on his face suddenly turns to a frown after this happens. The rider tries his best to remain calm while trying to get his chain back into position, while the cops slowly get closer by the second. Despite the initial hurdle, he still manages to escape these slow cops. What was supposed to be a normal day at work suddenly turns into an action movie scene with this cop after he decides to stop a biker on the road.
Det lönar det sig ofta inte att köra för fort. Något som de här motorcyklisterna inte verkar ha förstått. Polisen mäter deras hastighet till över 145.
After the biker refuses to pull over, the cop doesn't hesitate to chase him despite the narrow road making things dangerous.
Meter i timmen. Plötsligt får en av dem för sig att försöka smita från polisen och kör iväg i ännu högre fart.
The biker, still refusing to give up, continues speeding away while trying to desperately outmaneuver the police officer chasing him. Running from police escalates danger, increases legal consequences and risks injury or harm, outweighing any perceived benefits or temporary escape. Unfortunately, the end remains unknown as the video cuts abruptly. A biker with a camera attached near his tires captures an intense chase between him and a police officer on the highway. The biker can be seen speeding and dodging traffic in an attempt to lose the cops desperately trying to catch him. The cops can be seen having a hard time catching him due to being unable to dodge traffic because of being in an SUV. The biker takes advantage of this and escapes using his motorcycle. A group of bikers can be seen recording themselves doing tricks and speeding down an empty public highway in the middle of the night. The noise coming from their bikes and the dangerous tricks they were doing made the cops promptly decide to put an end to it. Despite the cops ordering them to pull over, the riders continue speeding, while some of them decide to turn up the heat. Unfortunately, the cops were too slow, leading the bikers to escape. After getting bored out of their minds, these three bikers decide to record themselves riding dangerously through a busy road. It doesn't take long for them to catch the attention of police officers, which inevitably leads to a dangerous chase happening. One of the riders can be seen desperately trying to pick his bike up after crashing due to being chased by the police. Impressively, he manages to pick up and ride his bike on time, despite the pressure from the police officers cornering him. Unfortunately for the police, they were too slow to catch the criminal. It's safe to say that most of us would immediately pull over as soon as a cop tells us to do so. For these riders, though, it's only an option. Despite the cop flashing his sound and sirens, the bikers continue to taunt him by speeding more and doing tricks. Doing tricks on a sport bike is dangerous due to the high risk of loss of control, crashes and severe injuries, including paralysis or death. This doesn't seem to stop these bikers though, as they continue running away and taunting the police officer chasing them. The bikers eventually manage to escape after losing the cop to their speed. A group of police officers are suddenly led to a terrifying chase after they spot a reckless driver trying to evade the law. The chase leads them to try their best to maneuver around heavy traffic while trying to keep up with the escaping criminal. After what felt like hours, the fleeing criminal eventually runs out of space to run, and what happens next is really satisfying. Attempting to flee from police can result in charges such as evading arrest, reckless driving, and resisting arrest, leading to fines, imprisonment, and license suspension. Thankfully, they were able to arrest this criminal before he harmed someone else. This police officer records himself using a GoPro attached to his helmet, chasing a criminal trying to escape on a dirt bike. Police chases vary in intensity depending on factors like speed, traffic, and the severity of the offense, ranging from low-speed pursuits to high-speed pursuits with multiple units involved. In this case, the police officer remains composed while chasing the criminal, which eventually leads to this happening. The criminal, finally accepting his defeat, proceeds to sit down and follow orders from the police officer coming to arrest him. This just goes to show how you cannot always run from the law. Similar to the previous video, this encounter opens with a group of cops chasing two criminals on a motorbike, rushing to escape. The criminals can be seen easily maneuvering through traffic and tight roads, giving the police officers a hard time chasing them. Police are trained in pursuit tactics and use various resources like vehicles, helicopters, and communication to apprehend criminals, but outcomes vary depending on circumstances. Fortunately for this group of police officers, luck seems to be on their side as the criminals finally succumb to the pressure leading to this happening. Both criminals were finally arrested and put on trial for their crimes. A commuter just trying to get home after a long shift suddenly gets met with a terrifying scene after he sees this happening on the road. The fleeing biker can be seen dangerously switching lanes while the cop behind him tries to keep up as best he can.
Polícia, PF. Olha lá, o cara da moto agora. Aí, ó.
At one point, the rider decides to abruptly switch lanes, which makes the cop react hastily, leading to something shocking happening.
Voltou de novo, ó.
After finally deciding that risking the lives of others isn't worth it, the cop finally does one last thing before giving up.
Olha lá, olha lá. Olha lá, pronto. Eita, pegou, olha.
Thankfully, the rider falls with ease, getting arrested soon after. What was supposed to be another day on the highway suddenly becomes problematic for a group of police officers after they see this.
Alcançar motociclista que não obedeceu a uma ordem de parada, flagrante exclusivo do jornalismo da Record TV.
Está em velocidade, em fuga.
The police officers hastily jump into action to stop the criminal. Unfortunately for them, the heavy traffic makes things a lot harder. Moments later, the fleeing criminal decides to take a right turn, only to regret his decision after something really shocking happens.
PM pula em cima da moto. O motociclista ainda tenta escapar com o policial na garupa, mas finalmente é imobilizado e detido.
One of the police officers immediately jumps onto the motorcycle of the criminal, effectively stopping him from running away. Due to the quick decision-making by the officers, this criminal was arrested safely. A highway unexpectedly becomes a high-speed racetrack after a group of police officers respond to a fleeing motorist. The policeman can be seen dodging heavy traffic by using private roads in an attempt to keep up with the criminal on a motorcycle.
São duas viaturas da Polícia Militar de Goiás que tentam fazer o cerco. Olha a arma, olha a arma. Olha a arma. O policial segurou o motociclista.
The criminal proceeds to almost lose the cops, and when all hope seems lost, something really unexpected happens.
Olha só, olha só. Ele tenta resistir. Os policiais estão tentando render esse homem. A moto...
If arrested after fleeing cops, you may face additional charges such as evading arrest, reckless driving, or resisting arrest, leading to legal consequences including fines and imprisonment. Thanks to these quick-thinking cops, the criminals face trials and charges. This next police chase begins with a police officer trying desperately to catch a fleeing criminal riding a sports bike.
O policial dá o comando de parar, mas o condutor da moto ignora.
The criminal can be seen maneuvering through traffic and using narrow roads in an attempt to lose the police officers. Moments later, the criminal decides to turn to an alley, and what happens next is something that you should see for yourself.
Entregar. Num ato final de desespero, ele abandona a moto e sai.
Despite falling off his bike, the suspect decides to continue running away from the officers, leading to this unexpected ending.
O rapaz despenca morro abaixo.
Unfortunately, they weren't able to catch the criminal due to being outsmarted. A rider who was out speeding on his bike suddenly regrets his decision after failing to see a cop waiting patiently to arrest him. Despite getting caught off guard, the biker remains calm and proceeds to speed away, refusing to surrender to the cops. Bikers can evade capture due to their agility, ability to navigate through traffic, and knowledge of terrain, presenting challenges for law enforcement during pursuits. After maneuvering through traffic and using tight roads for escape, this biker eventually ends up losing the cops on his tail. It seems like this biker got really lucky that there were no cops on motorcycles that day. What's supposed to be a life-threatening and intense run-in with the cops is just another day for this reckless biker. Police officers can be seen desperately trying to pull him over as he continues to smile at them while running away. Taunting police is not advisable as it can escalate the situation, lead to additional charges, and worsen outcomes for everyone involved. Unfortunately for the police officers, this man doesn't seem to care in the slightest who he hurts or offends during this situation. The man was able to escape due to the officers being too slow to catch him.